Welcome to another eFront tutorial video. In this video we will be showing you how to work with tests. Tests are created by the professor of the lesson. Logging into the professor's homepage, we select the lesson we want to create the test for. From the lesson homepage, we select the tests option. In order to create a test, we must first create the questions of the test. On eFront, we can create various types of questions, as you can see here. When creating a question, we can select the unit that it relates to. In this case, we select the general information unit. We can assign the level of difficulty and also the expected time we believe the students should complete this question in. Using the "what you see is what you get" editor, we can create the question text, and we can select files, for example images, that we can insert into the question. We select the image and then insert it into the editor. As you can see, and select the answer for this question. If we want, we can insert an explanation as to why the correct answer is correct. And save our question. Once saved, it will appear on our questions list, which we can preview to see what the students will see when completing this question. Let's create a match type of question now. We assign it to a particular unit. We set the level of difficulty. In this case, we'll say it's hard. And assign the estimated time to complete. Using the editor, once again, we can insert the text of the question. And in this case, we have to give the options for matching the answers. We can add as many answers as we like. You can delete an option using this button. Once you are happy with your choices, you can insert individual explanations. And in addition, you can insert an explanation for the whole question. And we save our question. Once again, we can see the question available now on the questions list. Now let's create a multiple choice question with many correct answers. We assign it once again to the parent unit, the level of difficulty, the estimated time to complete, and once again we input the text into the editor. We can insert the multiple choice answers that we want to show to the student, adding as many as we like. And by ticking the relevant checkboxes, we can assign the correct answers. If we would like, we can insert an explanation for each answer. And we save our question. Moving on to an empty spaces question, we assign the unit it relates to, the level of difficulty, and the estimated time to complete. And then we insert our text. With the empty spaces text, we must insert this hash key to allow for the empty spaces function to be activated. We create our empty spaces by clicking on this option, and then we can insert the correct answers. We can have multiple correct answers, which we separate using this symbol. We can also insert an explanation, and now let's see how to create a multiple choice question with a single correct answer. Once again, we insert the text into the editor, and we can insert as many answers as we like. And then we select which is the correct answer. In this case, we've selected 3, and we save the question. Moving on to the free text questions. Once again, we assign the parent unit which this question relates to, the level of difficulty, and the estimated time to complete. We insert the text into the editor, and we can, in this case, select whether it will automatically or manually be corrected. In this case, we will select automatically. We can give some predefined answers to the system, whereby when a student enters these keywords, they will get the points that we assign. We can add as many keywords as we like. And according to how many keywords the student gets right, he will be considered as to have correctly answered or not the question. So in this case, he must get more than 15 marks to pass this question. Saving this question, we will be redirected to the questions list. And now we will show you how to create a drag and drop question. We can select the unit it relates to, the level of difficulty and the time to complete. Inserting our text into the editor, we can create the question text. And now we can create the drag and drop questions and answers. We can add as many as we would like. And we save our question. Now that we have created our questions, we can go and create a new test. When creating a test, we can select which unit of the lesson it relates to. Alternatively, we can say it's a root unit and it will be placed at the end of the lesson. We give a name to our test. We can select the duration in minutes, or how many times we will allow the students to repeat it, how many times we want the system to keep the scores of each test taken, and the mastery score. We also have various other options. For example, we can show answers, or we can shuffle the questions and answers when being repeated, etc. We can give a quick description to our test, which we can save to then select the questions we want to include. We can manually select the questions we want within our test by ticking the relevant checkbox and assigning the weight of each question. Using the question type icons, we can easily distinguish between the different types of questions we have created and the level of difficulty reflected from the difficulty flags. Alternatively, we can also create a random selection of questions, which we will do as such. We assign various parameters to the system. In this case, we will mention that we want the test to last 10 minutes with 7 questions, and using this toolbar we can define which is more important to us. Clicking OK, we will see that the system has selected 6 questions with a total time of 9 minutes and 30 seconds. Alternatively, we can select the level of difficulty which we want our questions to be. The level of difficulty starts from the easiest with the green going to the hardest in the red. Each question is related to a unit, and accordingly we can select the number of questions from a unit and the level of difficulty that we want. Alternatively, we can define the type of questions we want to be included in the test relative to the units Alternatively, we can select the percentage from each unit we want our questions to be from. So for example, in this case we would like 50% of our questions to come from the general information unit. In the advanced settings now, we can assign, out of the 6 questions already selected, we can assign that we would like 3 randomly selected each time the test is executed by a student. This has now created a random selection of 3 questions for each test execution. We have allowed the student to select how many questions he will be answering. So let's go now and see the test that we've created. As you can see, we've created this general test, which we can preview. Going into the content of the lesson now, we can see that the test has been inserted into the lesson tree at the end as we selected. As you can see, this test is made up of 3 questions with a 10-minute time limit. So let's log in now as a student to see how we would complete this test. Going into the lesson, we navigate to the test. As assigned by the professor, we must insert the number of questions to answer. So we select a 3 out of a maximum of 3 available questions. And now we are in the test. We can see the time remaining. We enter the answer we believe is correct. As you can see, the drag and drop feature is very user-friendly. Once we complete the questions, we can submit the test. Upon completion, the system automatically gives us a score, and as defined by the professor, gives us explanations. Now let's log in as a professor to see how he would see the test results. Entering into the tests option, we see the available tests, and we can see that this student Scott has completed this general test. We can preview his results. And the answers that he has given. We can add some feedback to this user. And we can also add feedback for each question. We can print this results. We can reset the execution or all status. Logging in back as a student now. If we navigate to the test, we can see the feedback that the professor has provided. Logging back now into the professor, we enter into the tests, where we can view the test analysis by clicking on this option. From here we can see the test results and also the results of questions correlated to the units within the lesson.